my name is Emma, and today I'm talking about episode 10 of Shadowhunters. Now, I absolutely despised this episode. It was not the worst. Episode 3 is still reigning champion for the worst episode of Shadowhunters so far. I can admit, it wasn't the worst, and I know a lot of people found humor in it. I'm really happy that you found humor in it. I honestly wish I was one of you, but I found so many faults in the basis of this episode that I can't justify anything that happened in it. I know that there were parts that I should have laughed at, and parts that I was like, oh, like, that was kind of funny. But, it was not enough to make up for everything I didn't like about this episode. I'm really happy people liked it. I think it could have been a really fun idea, and I'm really, really glad a lot of people appreciated that. I am just not one of them. I was just so distracted by everything that I was thinking about this episode that I couldn't really pay attention to the content, even though I watched this episode 3 times to try and understand some of the things. But we're going to get out of this non-spoiler discussion so I can actually talk about my feelings on it, and hopefully you guys will want to discuss it with me. That's it for the non-spoiler section, so bye non-spoiler people. Alright, so the first thing I do want to say about this episode is I'm so happy they're filming outside in daylight for once. I know that they've had a few other scenes in a couple of other episodes where they're filming in daylight, but I feel like it's just such a refreshing kind of moment to see them out in daylight in some vivid green forest. I really just enjoyed the aesthetic of the first scene. I get that it's a dark, natural show you want to film at night a lot, but I just really enjoyed the fact that they filmed in daylight. One thing I will say about that first scene is that it took way too long for Meliorn to open that dimensional door. The entire time it took him to explain what this door was and where they were going to go and how it was going to help them and what they had to do. That entire time he was opening up this door, and it just felt way too long in my opinion. He was also doing warlock magic. I don't understand why Seelies are able to open these doors. It would have been different if there was an actual door there, but he was kind of making it appear out of thin air like warlocks do, so I didn't really understand that aspect of it. I'm kind of conflicted with Vampire Simon. I still feel like an episode later we're not getting actual Simon, and this is a really different character to me. He's kind of very manic in this episode. He's just not acting like himself at all, and I can understand that because he's a new vampire and everything's heightened. I just don't like the way that's being portrayed. I do like the line he gives when he's at the Jade Wolf and he's talking to Luke, and he's talking about him being a vampire now, and Luke is talking about how it's a tough transition, and Simon's it's like going through puberty all over again with less zits. We have Alberto back. I really wasn't a fan of him in the last episode. I'm still not totally feeling him yet, but it's lines like that remind me why I love him as Simon so much. Also, Ellen Van Spring is back and better than ever. Oh my god, how do they even get him to agree with this? Because he's so fantastic and so above this show. He plays the dark, evil villain so well, but he also plays the best, goofy, stereotypical dad I've ever met, and I want him to be my dad. Never in my life did I ever think I would want Valentine Morgenstern to be my father, but Shadowhunters has made me say that. He's just so engaged in Clary's cosplay that she's apparently doing in this parallel world. And he's I really want to see, you're gonna have to take me to one of your cosplay shows once. He's so fantastic. I love him so much. I cannot wait until we hopefully see more of him in the show. To be totally honest, I know that the Magnus commercial was supposed to be funny, but it just made me really uncomfortable. It was very awkward and staged to me, and I understand it's meant to be awkward and staged, and that's supposed to be funny, but it wasn't funny to me. I don't understand why it's okay for the parallel world to be more accurate to the books than the actual show. It's Shadowhunters was okay, we've changed everything thus far. Let's throw in some accurate things from the books for the fans for 42 minutes and that'll satisfy them, right? Wrong. To me, it kind of felt like they were just mocking it, when they're talking about Luke getting attacked by a dog and owning a rare bookstore. I'm I don't know, I didn't get a good vibe from it. I understand it was supposed to be funny, and I'm going to stop saying that because I know I'm going to have to say that 17 times, and I'm caught on my shirts. I know that's not how it's supposed to be, but I'm really, you choose now to put this in for 10 seconds when it's supposed to be the entire book series. Really? I think it was Lydia who said this when she was arresting Isabel. She was the law protects Shadowhunters from fighting Shadowhunters. Were you in the last episode? Did we forget about Alec and Jason nearly killing each other last episode? Or are we just gonna disregard that like everything else they put into this show. Shadowhunters fight Shadowhunters all the fucking time. The law is the reason Shadowhunters fight Shadowhunters. That's not the reason for the law whatsoever. So now I'm getting into one of the two parts that upset me most about this episode. So in TV, movies, stories, anything that has a parallel world, normally it's one central thing that has been changed that changes the world around it, so then we see the course of how this change is playing out. The change they decided to make in this parallel world in Shadowhunters is that there are no more Shadowhunters. There's been like no demons for like 100 years, so there's been no Shadowhunters. So this kind of messes up like everything. First of all, they're having like an institute party. Like the whole basis around this episode is Valentine's Mad Hatter party at the institute. Why are they maintaining a useless institute for 100 years? It does nothing for them. They don't need an institute. They don't need a place to train. They don't need a place to live. They don't need a place to stay. I don't get why they'd be maintaining it if it has no purpose, because there are no Shadowhunters. And if Shadowhunters have no purpose and there's no fighting demons, there's no need for them, they're basically normal people now. Why are all the Shadowhunters in New York? The reason that Alec and Isabel are in New York is because Maris and Robert are sent to the New York Institute because of what happened in the Circle. They made the deal. They would run the Institute because they needed someone to protect New York from the demons. There are no demons. There was no Circle because the Shadowhunters were done being Shadowhunters before Valentine was even born. So if this parallel world is staying consistent with itself, they'd probably still be somewhere near Idris because they never specified why they would pack up and move to New York. Also, why is Jace in New York? Because the reason Jace goes to the New York Institute is because Michael Wayland dies and Jace has nowhere to live, so it's either go to the Shadowhunter Academy or go where Michael Wayland's best friend and former parabatai lives in New York. And the reason Michael Wayland is dead is because of Valentine, who didn't exist, whose Circle didn't exist because there were no Shadowhunters at the time. You can say I'm nitpicking, and I'm fully aware that I'm nitpicking, but this is what the writers are being paid to do. Like, there's multiple of them so that at least one of them can say, hold up, wait, this doesn't make any sense. We kind of have to backtrack and find a foundation for this new plot line we're introducing. Why aren't they doing that? Why is a 19-year-old who is a fan of the books and watching the TV show have to figure out these plot holes they're creating? I don't understand it, and I'm really upset by this. The fact that there was no basis whatsoever for the actual parallel world they created is what I had a problem with. Had they made a little less of a drastic change that didn't completely change the course of the story, I would have been totally fine with a parallel world episode. Had they made it something like Valentine never created the Circle, Valentine didn't steal the Mortal Cup, anything that would have allowed the story to progress kind of similar to where it was now and have there still be some repercussions from that change would have made the episode so much better, but because of these gigantic plot holes they left, I couldn't focus on the parts of the episode I was meant to enjoy. And yes, I'm nitpicking, but I'm actually not nitpicking about how it's different from the books. I'm nitpicking about how the show is inconsistent and not well thought through. So for the people who tell me that I want everything to be exactly the same as the books, I don't. I just want a generally good standard show, which from this episode they didn't give me that. Can I just say that when Clary and Jace are like making out outside of like Java Jace or whatever it is, Clary's lip bite when Jace kisses her neck would make Anastasia Steele proud. Am I the only one that thinks that? Anastasia Steele is sitting on her $50 million couch watching her $70 million TV with Christian Grey around her arm thinking, that's my girl. So we have this one part where Clary's in the parallel world and then Jace and Meliorn are still outside that like dimensional door. And I feel like all of a sudden we have this influx of lines that are supposed to be like witty, sarcastic Jace lines, but they're all in a row. And they also weren't very good lines, but the thing I was most bothered by is that it was just like one after another, after another, after another. Like, why couldn't we space out those witty Jace lines throughout the season so far? Why do we have to have literally just a conversation of those? We start off with a pretty good line when Jace is like, if Clary doesn't get out of there soon, you're gonna be meditating 6 feet under. I thought that was funny. I thought it was clever. I thought it might be something Jace would say. But immediately after, he calls him pointy ears, and I'm like, okay, like, that was a really pathetic insult. And then we top it all off with, on a scale of 1 to namaste, how screwed are we, or whatever he says. I'm really confused by this. Like, namaste would be a 1 on that scale because it's all about peace and good vibes. Like, if it was on a scale of like measuring how screwed they are, it would be on a scale of namaste to holy fucking shit. Am I right? I just feel like we had this like overwhelming tidal wave of like half-hearted Jace jokes, and I just feel like you know, that moment would have been so much better if it wasn't trying so hard. I'm really happy we got to see Chairman Meow and Church. While I do wish they were included more, they really aren't like central characters to this story. So like, I'm okay with them moving it into the parallel worlds. I'm glad at least it was represented once. When Alec is talking about how he has something that Clay wants, I'm like, oh, here we go. And he's talking about how he's going to trade the Mortal Cup for Izzy's freedom, and he goes over to that thing where like he moves his steel across it and it comes up, and that's when the Mortal Cup is hidden. I'm like, psych, bitch! I do like the second he realizes it's not there, he's just like, Jace. Like, he knew it from the start, and I feel like that was something that probably would have happened a lot in Jace and Alec's childhood. I could just see Jace taking something of Alec's, or Jace doing something and Alec finding out or being blamed for it or something, and him just being like, Jace. I really like that line from Magnus when he's talking about how his magic isn't working, it hasn't been working for a while, and he's like, this is the longest I've abstained from a lot of things. If there's one thing I'm glad for in this show, it's that every once in a while we get these super Magnus-esque lines that aren't in the books. I feel like in these moments they capture Magnus really, really well, and I'm super thankful for that. I also like how Clary like kind of pokes fun at Magnus because like he's like, like I want this candle to light, and Clary's like, you normally have a bit of a flourish. Because I think the hand motions that Magnus does in the show are absolutely ridiculous, and I really appreciate that somebody recognized that it was a little excessive. Something else I really liked in this episode is I really liked Izzy in this episode. I like how they captured her nerdiness that doesn't really develop in the books until later. But I was actually reading Notable Shadowhunters, and they talk about how Izzy was kind of even a nerd before she met Simon because she was like all about weapons. So it was interesting to see that adapted into a more modern time. I also feel like we got more of Emerald in that portrayal of Izzy. I love Emerald. I feel like she's very bubbly and hyper and like pippy and peppy. And like, I got that in that episode. Another thing that I feel like was lacking from both the movie and the TV show up until this point is all the times in the books that they talk about how hysterical Isabel is. And I don't mean hysterical funny, I mean hysterical emotion-wise. I always picked up on that in the books because like I'm a very hysterical person, and I'm like, finally! Someone gets it! And so we get that scene when she gets the black eye from her kickboxing class and she's talking like a million miles an hour and she's like, boom, right home to see you. And then Claire's like, well, you got the boom, right? It was so funny. I'm really happy with Izzy. I love the scene at the end when she's like doing the robot dance. I'm like, she's so cute. I love her and I love Emerald. Oh my god. So good. That's one thing that I was super happy about in this episode was Izzy. I noticed a lot of people are like, oh my god, like alternate universe Alec was the best thing about this episode. I feel like we didn't see a ton from him, enough for me to say that. When they're outside of Java Jace, he's like, the theme is amazing. And then he talks to Magnus for like 5 seconds at the end of the episode. While I think it was an interesting portrayal, I wouldn't say that it was the best thing about the episode just because he wasn't a central part of it. I do like at the end how they have that kind of role reversal between Alec and Magnus, where Alec is the one that's like, playing hard to get, I like a challenge. I thought it was cute how they related that to the parallel worlds. I would have wanted so much more of that in that episode. I feel like that would have been a great opportunity to have more situations like that where it's references to the previous episodes, but that was really the only one I picked up on, but like I'm glad they had it. Also, I know a lot of people thought like Jace was hysterical in the episode. I thought it was really interesting. I don't want to say I liked it because like watching Needy Jace was like, he's so petty, I can't take it. But I know that I feel that way because I'm so biased towards Jace because he's my all-time favorite character and like I love him so much and I love his personality the way it is. It was definitely interesting to see a different side of him, but like I wouldn't say I enjoyed watching it, if that makes any sense. I'm not hating on it, I just thought that he was really petty and I'm just not used to that. So now we get into the other part of this episode that made me extremely upset and is one of the main reasons I didn't like it. I am so sad that this episode was a 42-minute advertisement. Literally the only reason that this episode was written in is because they got sponsored to do it by Alice Through the Looking Glass. I'm fine with advertisements and TV shows. I thought it would have been fine if they had a few here and there like every single movie and TV show does in the entire world. But it's the fact that the entire episode was centered around it, that it was really obvious that all this episode was to Shadowhunters was a big money bag. Like there were just so many plot holes in that foundation that I was talking about before, and like because they were getting paid to do it anyways, it's so obvious they had no care for this episode whatsoever. Also, this episode had nothing to do with the plot of the rest of the series so far. The last 10 minutes were the only part of this episode that had any relevance to the rest of the plot that they've been building up for the past 10 episodes. I've been telling everyone, like, this episode isn't even worth your time because not only was it really badly structured, but you don't have to watch it to understand anything that's going on. You can completely cut it out of the season and it would have made no difference because it had nothing to do with anything really. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I don't think this alternate universe thing was something that was originally written into the season. I think Alice Through the Looking Glass was like, hey, we'll pay you to make an episode about our movie and incorporate it into your show so we can get more viewers and we'll pay you for it. I feel like they were like, hey, let's make an alternate universe. You know, I don't think that was something that was like an original plan of course of action for the show. And I think had they already had this episode in mind and were like, hey, you know, it'd be really cool for like all the fans of the books to see all the references we make and have the fans of the show watch us poke fun at the other episodes, I think it could have been a fantastic episode. But because it was nothing but money to them, it was so obvious that there was no care, no thought, no sense put into it. Maybe had Shadowhunters not spent so much money on marketing and made a stupid fucking bus stop that did nothing for them, that nobody needed, they wouldn't have needed to take on a sponsored episode. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I've never seen an entire episode be sponsored and have the entire idea behind the episode around an advertisement before. That's just my feeling on it. I think there was no care, no thought, and no concern put into this episode. On a lighter note, there is one scene that I thought really captured the essence of Clary and Jace, which wasn't something that I feel like we've seen pretty much at all. You know, Clary's clearly very distractive and petty Jace is obviously picking up on that, so he asks her to dance and she's like, no, like I got shit to do, like I can't deal with you at the moment. So Jace is like, come on, like only one dance. And so they go back and forth like one, and Jace is like, why do you have somewhere else to be? I feel like that is something that vulnerable, very like one-on-one with Clary Jace would say. It wasn't sarcastic, it felt very sincere, and like it had that joking aspect that Jace like kind of always carries with him. Again, this is another very insignificant moment that I'm picking up on, like true moments from the characters, but I'm really happy about that because I saw that and I was like, that's Jace and Clary, that's what I want from the show all the time. Okay, so like I said, I watched this episode 2 or 3 times. I don't understand what this breaking the parabatai bond thing is. I went on shadowhunters.com and they always have those like 20 things you missed from the last episode, and one of the things is they talk about the parabatai tracking rune. Alex's parabatai rune, I'm assuming, is on his like abdomen, and so they draw a rune over it that kind of looks like a pretzel, and like that makes it able for Jace and Alex to kind of see each other. So was he tracking Jace or was he breaking the bond? Because they definitely said that he needed to break the parabatai bond. I'm really confused. I think it was totally unclear, and I know a ton of other people had problems identifying what was actually going on. How can you track a parabatai if you're trying to break the bond? I just don't understand what they were doing there. I would have had no problems had they just been tracking them. I would have been like, okay, this is different, but like I really don't care. Breaking the parabatai bond, it doesn't fucking happen. Like, do they not understand what the plot of Lady Midnight is? Like, you can't break the parabatai bond. And then they're talking about breaking it, but then they're tracking him. It was very jumbled and mushed together, and I just don't understand where they were going with that. If you can clarify that, please tell me and send me the source, because I prefer to read the source material on these things, and I don't necessarily trust the things that people find from like tweets and blog posts. So if you know for a fact that this is what they were doing with that, please tell me in the comments because I really want to know. So then we get to the very end and Jace is still being really petty and he sees a demon and he's crying, and yes, it was kind of humorous, but I'm still not gonna laugh at it. I couldn't bother to laugh at this episode at all, really. But somehow normal Jace, like Jace from like the real world, who's with Meliorn right now and like in total pain because of the parabatai tracking rune, I don't even understand anything that happened in this episode. He comes into the parallel world and like he's here and they're fighting demons and whatnot. And then Jace gets stung by the demon and is like dying, and all I can think in this moment is, oh my god, I hope they kill him off. Can we just talk about how I legitimately and truly and fully hoped that they would kill off my all-time favorite character in the TV adaptation of my favorite series of all time? Can we just take a moment to appreciate how Shadowhunters has done that to me? I would love this show so much more if Jace wasn't in it, and I can't believe I'm fully saying this, but it's the absolute truth. I'm just like appalled that like my first instinct when Jace got stung is like, oh my god, I really hope that he dies. Like that was truly and sincerely my full honest thought at that moment. And then we get to the very end of the episode, which is the last 10 minutes, which of course always fucking bother me. I don't know why they're out to get to the people who stayed till the end, because the last 10 minutes are always fucking terrible. I had known that Michael Wayland was going to be included in this season because I had seen stills of him and Jace from episode 11, I think it is. First of all, can I just say, freeform, if you're trying to include a plot twist that you want to shock people, don't fucking post stills 2 weeks before the episode premieres. Like, I think that's anything that anyone would say. Like, don't fucking spoil the plot twist if you're trying to make it shocking to people. But Michael Wayland is here. And I don't know why. I don't know what they're doing with this. I think the obvious thought that a lot of people are having at this moment is that Valentine has been using the shape-shifting rune to turn into Michael Wayland as he was raising Jace. But at the end of that portal, that's clearly not Valentine, because how could Valentine know that they were actually there? Clearly Michael Wayland is still alive, and why would Valentine, the most evil person, the villain of the story, keep someone alive that he doesn't really need, unless the person that you're turning into has to be alive for that to work? There's just so many questions around why are they keeping him alive and where are they going with it. Honestly, it would have been so much fucking easier for them to have Michael Wayland just be dead and like not include that whatsoever. Shadowhunters has this thing where they make changes to the books that are so much more complicated than just leaving things the way it is. Why write out this whole other plot line? Why pay money to have another actor? I don't get it. Like, why change all these things? It was so much easier when he was just actually dead, and it made so much more sense. I got mad about this 2 weeks ago. I'm over being mad about Michael Wayland being alive. I just don't know where it's gonna go. I know it's gonna be terrible because it makes no sense. Everyone knows that Jace and Clary are revealed to be siblings at the end of City of Bones. Everyone who has ever read City of Bones knows that. But with Michael Wayland being alive, they're either suggesting that he's actually Jace's father and that they're not siblings, like maybe that's gonna be the crazy plot twist, is that they aren't siblings. I don't know. But if he isn't Jace's father, why does Valentine have any need for him? And why does Michael Wayland recognize Jace? Because if he wasn't Jace's father, they probably would have never met. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no clarity as to what's going on at the moment. I'm definitely interested to see where it's gonna go, but I don't have high hopes for that. That's it for my discussion on episode 10 of Shadowhunters. I know some people enjoyed this episode. Again, I'm really happy if you enjoyed it because I thought it had the potential for a lot of people to like it. I just unfortunately really did not like it. But I would love to discuss this episode with you guys, so as always, please leave all of your thoughts in the comment section and we can discuss it. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!